Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Deep Space Nine Deep Dive. Number 2 passes Prologue. So we've seen this episode countless times, except for CIRROC. He's seen it once and now twice, I think.
Yeah.
So let's kind of talk about what we noticed this recent time. If you haven't seen it very recently, just the last time you've seen it. What do you think, Scott? Did you find anything new that you hadn't seen before, or something that you appreciated more this time?
I found a couple things. Actually, the little detail that I hadn't picked up any time watching this, which was probably about the 40th or whatever time, is how we had and I'm going to do the same thing. I actually wrote it out phonetically. Konma, is that right? Konma? Yeah, I phonetically wrote it out. It's kind of like the Bajoran resistance version of Section 31 and the Obsidian Order, and that group that's ready to go just too far for the greater good. And I thought that it linked in with the story really well of Kira with the balance between growing up and selling out. I've spent my entire life in the punk scene, and a lot of people are like, "Oh, if you go and do stuff for money and stuff like that, it's selling out." And the importance of being true to yourself as growing up and not selling out. And it was extremely important. And I love how that was actually even said to her, how it was said, you've got to be true to yourself over these people that are still, fighting a war that's probably it's ended in reality. I don't know if it's ended in their minds because they grew up. I mean, because Kira and all of her contemporaries never knew life outside of an occupation. It was 50, 60 years long. So she never knew anything but that. So, yeah, I thought that was very interesting. And I love the first appearances or the reappearances of the Ross sisters and then the greatest rat actor in the world.
Yeah.
That was also. I had to pause the TV because that memory popped in my head when I saw that rat. And I was like, why, he's a good actor. And I just fell out. It was absolutely great.
Well, Scott, do you think that Major Kira is selling out or growing up here?
I think she is 100% growing up. And if not for people like her from the Resistance, once again, giving an example of how to move forward, because she was doing that while she was throwing bombs into buildings and stuff like that. And she's doing it now. It's just she's willing to evolve and she's willing to adjust. And I think that's only a precursor to what we see of her in the future and the path that she does take, because Bajor needs to evolve, just like eventually Cardassian needs to evolve. And you need to change in order to survive. That's one of the oldest, they've said in canon, one of the oldest civilizations in the galaxy is Bajor. So who knows what they've been through? What's their ancient history? Their ancient history. Have they seen something like the occupation before? And they have evolved and survived and still been one of the most spiritual and artistic, groups of people in the galaxy. So I think definitely Kira is. I mean, I definitely wouldn't tell her to her face she's a sellout, or even say the word anyone near her. Especially season 1, Kira.
Smart man. Smart man.
Like, she is waiting to elbow somebody in the face at any moment, and I love every minute of this. It is absolutely great. Definitely.
Your thoughts. What did you catch this time that you hadn't noticed before? Any new thoughts on it?
A couple things. After following on from a comment that I made on a review of a TNG episode recently, and following on from what Lisa said and what Jed said, I think that the best review of this is what Ira said when he said, in past Prologue, there's a moral dilemma for Major Kira where she's going to confront her loyalty to her past life and what her new life is going to be. He says it's really about her. It's illuminating our new characters. And that presence of a manager or that presence of a leader, military leader, incorporating people so that they own every aspect of things that happen on that station. I thought that these writers were just blessed with it beyond incredible foresight in how to develop a story. And I really, really like that. I think, and then I'm awed. I'm blown away that Aaron was able to so clearly illuminate that for us so early on. And I just, wow, just incredible stuff. The character development was key. The other thing that this aired about the time that I moved to Shanghai, and I was living there for 3 years. And it's after that period of time that I'm now rewatching this. And bit of a comment on that. The name of the runabout was the Yangtze Kiang, and Kiang means river or depending on where you're from, it's either Kiang or Jiang in Chinese. But Yangtze is not the Chinese way of saying the river. The river is so long that different portions of it are named different things depending on where it is. And this particular name came from missionaries that were around the area of Yangzhou, which is just west of Nanjing. And that particular part of the river is called the Yangtze Jiang by those people only, and they picked that up, and it stayed with the Western culture, and then it found its way into our language. But in Chinese, initially it was called Da Jiang, which is Da is the character for large, which we see in Daimon. Probably the original writing was Daimon, because it means large. It's Da in Chinese and Dai in Japanese, and I think they were going for that for big leader for the Ferengi. But then a couple hundred years after that, and until now, it became Changjiang. Chang means long, and so Changjiang, Long River. And I know that the writers were going for a little bit of incorporation of Earth cultures, ancient Earth cultures, when they named the runabout to show that we're one big planet now rather than a series of individual countries. But I thought it would have been a little bit better if they'd gone with Changjiang instead of Yangtze Kiang, because that would have been more appropriate for what the Chinese said. Yeah, that was to me a little bit off. Yeah, we were right there on that one, I know. But I thought I thought Changjiang would have been a better way to name it. So that's my thoughts on this. But fantastic character development. Loved it. And then new insight from having lived in China. The naming could have been a little better, but maybe.
Is that what we're seeing behind you?
That is the Changjiang. Exactly. That is the river. That's the portion of what we call the Yangtze River. This is much further west than what you would find than the area where the Yangtze or Yangzhou is. But I mean, it starts way up in the mountains off to the west, and it comes down and it goes up, and it eventually filters out into the sea just past Shanghai, just north of Shanghai. And that's the Yangtze River, the Changjiang.
Nice.
Is that something that you would have to you'd have to live there to know that, though? I mean, that's
Right.
not.
No, Wikipedia will give you all this too. But I mean, living there, I had to call the things by their appropriate name when I wasn't speaking in Chinese to them. So I don't speak it fluently, but I know enough. When I wanted to go from this place to that place, I needed to know the localized names rather than saying the names that we would use in English.
Where's the Yankee River?
Right.
Get out of here.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
Not your best, but it's good.
No, it was this that did it.
Yeah. That's what
Well, the other thing is, one other comment is if this group of rebels was at an elite English university, they might have been called the Oxford Comma.
Oh.
Sorry.
Ryan's
for you,
rubbing
Ryan.
off on everyone.
That was
There
top
you
shelf
go.
right there. That was.
So what? So I apologize, Jason, but you have to follow that.
That's hard. That's hard.
You don't have to drop as much knowledge on us if you don't. Nobody knows as much about stuff as but welcome. And have you seen this episode recently? If so, did you notice anything different or have any new thoughts on it that you hadn't noticed before?
Well, I mean, I've seen the episode many times, and I actually did rewatch it again today, and I saw it a few weeks ago. So I was just kind of curious to see from the perspective of it all. And I tend to look at things sort of from a global perspective, and I think what was mentioned is if you're watching the early, I guess, episodes of TNG versus the early episodes of Deep Space, and I've never really contrasted them in that level. I mean, sort of the general wisdom is the first couple of seasons sucked, or they weren't as good, or whatever it is. But everything is, you look at everything in comparison. And perhaps, I mean, this is not the best episode of Deep Space. I mean, it isn't. It's a good episode, but it's certainly not among the best. Or I don't think anybody would put it among the best. But if you look at what came as the first regular episode of The Next Generation, The Naked Now, which is not a very good episode. I mean, it has moments in it. It has funny moments. It has a lot of things. But overall, it's derivative. I mean, they gave John Z.F. Block the story credits. I don't think he participated in it at all. I mean, they just took the old plot from it. And they had 1,000 cooks in the kitchen. They had Roddenberry pulling, and they had his lawyer rewriting things. I mean, it was absolutely crazy. So you have this Naked Now followed by the absolutely unwatchable Code of Honor, and then
written by the lady that wrote this episode, Catherine
Right.
Powell.
Oh, that's right. I mean, the contrast of it all is really, really interesting. And again, I mean, her name's on it, but I'd be curious to know what she actually wrote versus what ended up on the screen. It's not the should I wrote, it's the one they shot. So it's just a matter of, what ended up there. And there's something here that's a hell of a lot better in terms of character development. You jump right in. I mean, in essence, this is really a bottle show. There's really nothing it's pretty much old standing sets. I mean, they had sort of these little things with the inserts on the screen, but mostly it looks like a bottle show, which is kind of, I don't say risky, but it's typically not what you do for the first after the pilot. But it was kind of interesting to see. And the fact that I think they got Rick Colby to do it was really interesting. I mean, he's very, very good. It's a very steady hand. And the way he shows things, there are a lot of things sort of in the foreground, gives a sort of depth and dimension, which is hard to do when you have sort of this 4:3 frame. There's one particular shot, I think it may have been in Act 1, where Cisco and Kira are speaking talking on the promenade, and there are people walking in front of the camera, which is very unusual. You don't often see that.
Mm-hmm.
You often see this sort of this close talking. You have two people sort of their heads together because of the frame.
Mm-hmm.
And once you put something in the foreground, it gives you depth and perception, and together with the story, it adds something that gives it quite a bit more depth. Not just sort of, it gives it visual depth. So I think this was quite a bit different from what you'd usually see. And I forget who shot The Naked Now, who was a director on it. But this is, I mean, honestly, this was done a hell of a lot better. If you look at the shots in Ops, there's a lot of panning, sort of these one shots. There's a lot of panning. So you're observing. And then there's some pickup shots here and there. I mean, you really feel like you're there. It's sort of a visceral feeling to it all. And the fact that you have characters who are formed almost from the very beginning. And I think, if you look at sort of the Star Trek series as a whole, you look at the sort of the series from the 80s and 90s, I guess, DS9 certainly came out as the most formed. If you look at the original series, it came out with a bang right away. The first year, I mean, it really came out, you see all the characters right there. I mean, Spock took a little bit to sort of figure out, but everybody else is there. On the Next Generation, it took quite a while for this to sort of ferment. I mean, people were sort of put off by the Picard character for a while, and there are reasons for that. On Deep Space, everybody comes out sort of right there. They're very well formed. You know who Kira is. You know who Odo is. I think there were little issues with writing Bashir for a little bit. I mean, they couldn't really kind of get his voice for a little while, but they finally got him. Mm-hmm. But everybody else is sort of right there, and you have an incredible guest cast. I mean, you have Andy come in, and it's just great. I mean, the shot starts. You're sort of looking at Bashir sitting at a table. There's something in the foreground, and then Andy walks in. I mean, it is a great shot, sort of a little bit from below. I mean, it was marvelously done. So it's just kind of what kind of coming back to what I started with. The first thing that you notice is how much better perhaps it is than its reputation. And that I think, struck me the most. I mean, I never thought this was bad, but I didn't realize how good it was until I really started paying attention to the little things in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting that you brought up the people walking in the foreground, because Aaron said the same exact thing as far as directing style from Rick Colby. And I was like, oh, yeah, see, he got that too. he noticed that as well. Cool stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah, great stuff. Thanks, Jason.
Yeah, thank you, Jason.
What about you, Jed? Did you notice anything new this time?
Yeah, I did, and this is a little bit of I think Maya may have used the term riff. I'm gonna riff off of Scott. What Scott had mentioned. I was taking this and thinking about what was happening in the world, and at that time it was being written, and I came away with strong, Irish Republican Army vibes, which obviously there's huge parallels to the Bajoran resistance, of course, and colonialism, and you've got perhaps more Sinn Féin before they demilitarized, and so you've got these really hardliners, and so that's what I started to take from it, thinking about that was the time frame. The peace accords, a Dayton peace accords. I was looking this up. I don't know all this off the top of my head, but I was looking this up. I was like, when was that? And that was a few months later after this, or specifically. But that was happening at that time frame. We forget about that, especially on this continent. And 20, 30, 40 years later, the Troubles and that sort of thing. And so that's kind of what I took from it, especially later in the episode with the anti-colonialism statements and sentiments from Tana. As Kira is evolving, as you'd mentioned earlier, and as we and realizing he's stuck, he can't evolve, and so that I really did take that away, and completely different. My second thing here is the introduction of Garrick, who was not going to be a recurring character, and became this incredible character, largely if not completely due to Andrew Robinson, and is it's my personal favorite character in all of Star Trek. Wow. That is a big thing to say, and so for me to rewatch this today and realize that this is the introduction, and some of the behind the scenes things I was reading up on was important for me, and how, the opening scene for the second episode, what Jason just said, this is the opening scene of the second episode of a series, and it's in a cantina, it's in the Replimat, and it's just, there's flowers right in front of, and I noticed that because I'm a florist, there's flowers right in front of Bashir, and
tickling his nose.
Garrick, yeah.
That was
and I'm
so
like,
good.
That realism, he is so off foot, and Garrick is just like a cat and a mouse, and you get that instant sense. And this is before the credits, the opening credits there. So the opening scene. So those two things, and thinking that what's past is prologue, past prologue here, and you've got you've got Garrick's past as a spy. You've got even O'Brien wasn't much in this, but even he said something along the lines of, "Commander, do you know what the Cardassians do to a prisoner?" And that's his past that comes up obviously later on. You've got, of course, Kira and Odo. Really, kind of, you're looking at their past and that sort of stuff. But Garrick, who's not intended to be a long-term character, is so full of detail as we know it now. So it's very interesting to have that past, and then his future, the prologue, that sort of stuff. So it was, I really enjoyed this episode. I really enjoyed going back to it today, and I'm more than I anticipated. So.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to be keeping an eye on all the shrubbery and flowers now as we move forward. Jed's going to like this scene.
Space florals. Space florals. I'm going to have, it's going to be my little one-off in some of the after parties there.
That should be a new trivia game, Space Florals.
Xenobiology with Keiko.
Exactly.
He was a florist too. Garrick was a florist on Romulus, so
right. Good knowledge. Yeah. That's right.
Wow.
All right, Melissa, did you notice anything this time that you hadn't noticed before?
Yes, and I'm gonna say that I noticed Garrick more this time than I did the last time, and he's got a lot going on in here, and and it's wonderful to watch, and I don't know how I missed it before, and maybe it's because I was from the beginning I was so taken with Kira that she was the only one that I saw. But she surprised me again too in this episode, just what she has going on in her face. But Garrick too has some amazing things that he makes me want to know more about him. And I noticed the way he approached Bashir this time, for the first time, than I did before. And Bashir is just this innocent
deer in the headlights.
Deer in headlights. And Garrick definitely sought him out, and I definitely noticed that this time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, CIRROC, any final thoughts before we head out?
Final thought. One, I liked when Odo says to the Duras sisters, "I'm the one giving you the choice."
Yes, thank you for bringing that. That was like the best line. Because they said, "And who are you?" He said, "I'm the one giving you the choice." Oh,
yeah.
Love
Because I'm waiting for him to say I'm the chief, the head of security, but he didn't. He's like, "I'm giving you the choice. So, do you want to stay or do you want to go?" I love the line. And the other thing I was thinking was when Bashir found out that the substance inside the vial was like bellitrium or whatever it was called. I was thinking, isn't he a genius? Like he should know a little bit about it. Like, not a whole lot, but it's just like at least know that it's a bomb making material or something like that. I thought that was a little bit.
See, CIRROC's turning into one of us now.
Yeah, I'm like, isn't he? He's a supercomputer. He's a smart guy. He's supposed to know what the hell that is.
Yeah, but he can't let on yet. They don't know.
Oh, okay. He's playing.
Yes, he's an undercover genius.
Okay. And then the last thing I'll say was, when the Duras sisters were paid their 13 kilograms of gold pressed latinum, I thought that bag looked real light.
That was a very light. I mean, that's just that's a prime example of how much stronger Klingons are. I noticed the same exact thing. I was like, 13 kilograms. That's
like 30 pounds.
Almost 30 pounds. Yeah.
Slinging it around.
Well,
they were slinging it around. I was like, you might want to check that because I don't think it's all there.
Or
you just got played by.
Yeah.
I'm gonna count that.
There's packing peanuts in here.
Got played by Garrick, man. Somebody.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's about it for us. Everybody at home, thanks for joining us. This has been a lot of fun. And Jed, Goldie, Scott, Jason, and Mai, thank you as well for joining us and enriching this deep dive. So cool, all the fun things that we can see upon a second or fifth or 30th viewing. So everybody at home, thanks very much. And until next time, always remember the 7th rule.